All right, here on Live Now from Fox, let's now be joined by Darcy Olsen, CEO and founder of the Center for the Rights of Abused Children, to discuss further. Darcy, how could this go unnoticed for so many years?
That's the question that everyone is asking. And I have to think that over the next few weeks, as more and more people come forward, what we're going to learn is that people they did observe the children in different situations and just didn't make that phone call. So there was an employee at a local store who said, the children, I'd see a child almost every night coming in, and they were super, super skinny, and their hair was always over their face, and the parents didn't let them talk to anyone. When you see something like that, that just is so extraordinarily, that gives you that feeling like this is not normal, and this child is too thin. That's when you make that phone call. And I think what happened is that when these children were observed, those phone calls weren't made. And so it's just critically important. If you think you're seeing something, say something, and then let the police do the investigation.
Really devastating. Darcy, what does justice for these children look like?
Well, we're all looking for some glimmer of hope in this situation. And I think the fact that these 16 children are still alive is something that everyone is holding on to, and that the 4 perpetrators or alleged perpetrators are behind bars. I think, like most people out there, I don't know that there can ever be justice in a situation like this. But I mean, the law will carry out the law, and they'll be prosecuted. But will the children ever recover? And I mean, that's the bigger question. Will they have justice? Will they have normal lives? What's next for them? And I think we have to really resist that fairy tale rescue idea, because we know that when children are neglected for this many years, that sometimes they may never be verbal. Sometimes they're never able to care for themselves. And so we can hope for the best, fight for the best, pray for the best, but also be realistic about the consequences of this kind of neglect going unreported and unnoticed.
Absolutely. And I do want to talk about shelter and how these children can at least start to get on a path to some sense of normalcy. I know you do a lot of great work at the center, so hopefully you can help us understand some details about the child welfare system. We know that child welfare officials have temporary custody of the 16 children. When could they be in a safe, even permanent living situation? And do you think all 16 of them can stay together?
So each child is going to be different, right? One child was intubated, a few are out of the hospital. So they're in really different situations as far as their physical health. And the same will be emotionally, behaviorally, mentally. And so the first thing is they have to make sure that the child is physically safe, and then they have to see what their capabilities are, and then they have to assess what's going to be best for that child. So for some of them, they might be able to be with a sibling or 2 or 3. Some may end up having to be in therapeutic hospitals or psychiatric wards. And so it's one of those things that will unfold. And I want to say it's critically important that the authorities in the child welfare system, that they run all of the background checks, that they do the criminal fingerprinting and so forth. When the Turpin children were found in California, it was a very similar horrific situation. And several of those children were put into a home where they were re-abused, and because they hadn't vetted the home carefully enough. And so it's just so critical to make sure every step of the way that these children are with the safest people who have been vetted, and that they only have the best care from now on. And that's going to give them the best chances for recovery.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, a couple of them are getting medically evaluated. After that, what does that path to normalcy look like? Enrolling in schools, sort of reintegrating into life. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, in 2005, there was a little girl called the Girl in the Window, and she was known as Danny Crockett at the time, and she was adopted into a really loving home. And 10 years later, she was still pre-verbal. She couldn't take care of herself, and she actually has to live full time with caretakers in an institution.
Mm.
And her adoptive father says it's just so heartbreaking because she's got a 25-year-old body and kind of a 2-year-old mentality. And so this was a child who had had neglect for 6 years. And those windows for development seem to have closed. So even despite the best care and all of the love and therapy that she had, so that situation can happen. But we've also seen children who have been resilient and recovered from situations after 10 years or 15 years of enduring things that we don't even have the words for. So anything is possible, and it's just I want to express my gratitude for the first responders who went in there and accompanied these children to the hospital, and the caretakers who were there holding their hands and trying to communicate with them. And those folks are going to live and be haunted by these children forever. And I think I speak on behalf of the nation that we're so grateful that people do this for children and families every day across America. We're grateful to them, and it's because of good people like that, and the good homes and the good care that they're going to get, that these children will have hope for a brighter future.
Absolutely. Well, let's wrap up. Tell us about the Center for the Rights for Abused Children and how you guys help in scenarios similar to these.
Thank you. Well, I fostered 10 children and adopted 4, and that's how I ended up starting the Center for the Rights of Abused Children, because I realized that we always think of children's physical safety, that's all we have to be concerned with. And I realize sometimes when they go into the system, they're still not safe, and the laws are still not there to be protective of them. So we have pro bono attorneys who work for free, who take children's cases all over the country when they're in these terrible situations, and often they have no one to represent them or fight for their rights in court. And so we stand in for them, and then we try to shape policies to make it better for children. So for instance, there are actually people who are trying to get rid of mandatory reporting. So right now, if you see abuse, you're supposed to call that in. And there are people who think that's not a good idea, and that people shouldn't have to make those phone calls. And we're going to advocate that those calls need to be made, because children can't fight for themselves and they can't make those calls themselves. And so it's up to us as a community to step in and rescue. And then, as I said before, let police do their job, let them do the investigating. But if you suspect something or you're suspicious of something, please always, always speak up to authorities.
All right, Darcy Olsen, thank you so much for coming on Live Now from Fox. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Of course.